I think the theme of this gospel could be rightly entitled, "The Search for Truth and the Courage and Grace to Act Justly Upon It." This is a rather common theme of Jesus's throughout the Gospels. And I suspect the reason for that is because Jesus knew so well how difficult this task was going to be for the disciples. Their very lives were going to be at stake. It was going to be more than just a tough day at the beach. And the same holds true for us, the descendants of the disciples. Think how difficult life can be, how difficult it is to find truth. Sometimes I wonder, why is it so elusive? Just when it seems like I understand, something happens to let me know that I don't. Look at the things that we struggle with. We struggle with the immigration problem. It's so complicated. What's the right thing to do? That's just one example. How about the oil crisis we're facing? What's the answer? Depends on who you ask. It's so hard to get to the truth. You begin to wonder if it's worth the effort, but you know that it is because it's so important. I don't know what the answer is, but I think I know what the process is. The process is to read, listen, talk, debate, discuss, and pray. And hopefully some of the answers will come to us through all of those efforts. At least it's worth the efforts. And then the second part of it, the courage to move once we know the truth. Because sometimes we do. Sometimes it is clear to us what the truth is, but we hold back. And the big word, the nasty four-letter word, fear. Jesus talked about it extensively, certainly in this gospel as well as others. Do not be afraid. How often Jesus used those words? Fear no one. Fear only the one that can take away your soul. And of course, only God can do that. What holds us back? It can be fear of what people will say, fear of the consequences of our action, even though it might be the right one. Are we prepared to perhaps alienate people? Perhaps be ridiculed? Perhaps even lose a job if it's serious enough? It's not easy, and I don't mean to suggest that it is. But did anybody promise us a rose garden? No. Jesus never said it was going to be easy. In fact, he said the very opposite. It will be difficult, but I will be with you. And we have to forbear. Never lose hope, never lose faith, and keep struggling. And hopefully, we learn things. We do grasp a certain amount of truth, and we do make some right decisions. Because sometimes, if we don't, the results can be devastating. Joe Butler had just completed a tour of duty at Vietnam. This was about 30 years ago. And he naturally was very anxious to get home. So they flew him to the West Coast from Vietnam, and he has a 3-day discharge process that the Army utilizes. So he called home to Chicago, and he was pretty anxious to talk to his parents. And he gets his mother on the phone, and he tells her how excited he is to get home and gives her an idea when he's going to arrive, probably in about 3 days. And he says, I have a big favor to ask of you, and I want you to think about this, and I'll call you back tomorrow and see what your answer is. Because I think you and Dad need to talk it over and maybe include my brother and sister. But here's what I'd like you to do. I have this friend that I've gotten to know over in Vietnam. His name is Bob Johnson. And Mom, he's really a good guy. He's from Wisconsin, not very far from Chicago. And he's come to the realization while he's been in Vietnam that he's gay. And he's really struggling with what's going to happen when he gets home. He did call about an hour ago. And his parents said to him, didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say. They were devastated. And he feels like he shouldn't go home just yet. He needs, he thinks, to give them some time to kind of deal with this news. So my request is that he be allowed to come home with me to our house. Maybe for a week, maybe 2 at the most, just to give him some time to kind of cope and give his family time to cope. His mother says, gee, I don't know. I do need to talk it over with your father. So, okay, you're going to call tomorrow. Fast forward 24 hours. Joe calls back. And his mother said, gee, Joe, we really respect your desire to help your friend. We think it's wonderful. But you know, there's Dad's business. You know, the hardware store isn't doing very well. There's a Home Depot that just moved in, and Dad's really, really worried. And you know, and your brother, you know, he's 12. He's so impressionable. What's he going to say? What's he going to do? And you know, your sister is 16, and everything is a crisis in her world. I don't know what she would do. And you know, my sister, your aunt, she'll never understand this. She isn't going to begin to cope with this. She probably won't speak to me. And you know, and the neighbors, what are they going to say? You know, we've been in this neighborhood for 30 years. We can't get up and leave. We got to live with these people. So, Joe, I hate to say it, but I really think you need to tell Bob that you just can't do it. But, you know, I think it's wonderful that you were willing. So Bob says, it's okay, Mom, I understand. He hangs up. The next day, Joe's parents get a phone call from California indicating that their son is dead. And they're devastated. How could he possibly be dead? We talked to him yesterday. He was fine. And the police said, well, you need to come out here. We really don't want to get into too much detail over the phone. So naturally, they flew out. And they went and they identified his body. And they found out that he had taken an overdose. And he was dead. And they said, you know, before we leave and go back, I would just like to talk with a fellow named Bob Johnson, who Joe's gotten close to, and I'd like to talk to him because he obviously was a close friend. And the sergeant in the bivouac area looked at his roster and he said, I'm sorry, but there's no Bob Johnson.